This is the Fearless Launching Show. I'm your host, Anne Samoylov. Today we're speaking to Kristoffer Carter, and you'll hear me call him KC because that's how we roll here. But Kristoffer is the founder of This Epic Life, a training organization for conscious leadership, which has created a daily meditation practice for thousands of people. He is also the creator of the Four Permissions framework, which guides his coaching of Fortune 100 executive leaders at Amazon, AT&T, EXP Realty, Edward Jones, and many, many more. Casey is also a professional songwriter, a TEDx speaker, and international retreat leader. He lives in Akron, Ohio, and he's got an amazing family that I feel so honored that I was able to meet over the past few years. So Casey has been on our podcast in the past, but this time we're talking about his brand new book, Permission to Glow. And I am so excited about this. We're still in pre-orders, so get in while things are really still gearing up, and so you can really get the full Casey experience. All right. So let's dive in. We get some behind the scenes of the launch. We get some what the book is about, and we get some practical things that you can take away from this, even if you're not launching a book, even if you're not writing a book, but really it's just how to move into whatever space you're in as a leader. And Casey really is such a great example of this. All right. I'll see you on the other side. I'm so excited. And we're going to join this mid-conversation because of like some weird Zoom hiccup. So you'll see, we just get right into it. Okay, I'll see you over there. The Fearless Launching Show was created to answer the question, how can I launch my big idea to the world in the most simple, straightforward way possible and reach more of the right people? I'm your host, Anne Samoylov, and I've been helping 6- and 7-figure business owners launch for over a decade. And while I love geeking out about improving launches, new launch strategies, what's working, what's not working, I'm also obsessed with exploring the heart, the mind, the challenges of running your own business. And that's what we're going to do each and every week. I want to show you how to launch that course or coaching program or other creative work and navigate the journey of being an online entrepreneur. So if you're ready for some new perspectives, some new stories around launching, well, I can't wait to share those with you. Let's get into today's episode. Casey, since we've met, and I think there's another podcast because you were on one other time, and I'm gonna link over to that one. Our meeting was so funny, and I was so awkward and so weird, and I was just like, what is happening? Who is this person who's just like talking to me, at WDS or something way back in the day?
Right.
So if you want to know that origin story, you can go over there. But today we're going to focus on Permission to Glow and really talk about how this book came about and a little bit of the process that you're going through now. I don't want to get too ahead of where you are because, launches can be kind of surprises, right? We want things to kind of be a little bit of a like, oh, it's a party. Yay, this is happening,
Yeah. Oh God, I'm totally in the thick of it. And what comes up for me as you mention it is that I'm trying my best to launch this book in alignment with the book itself, with each of these four permissions. And people from the outside might think that there's just this, kind of audacity to the launch of just pushing lots of things out, which is part of my way. That's how I like to do things. But there's so much else under the hood in terms of feeling and chilling out and waiting and watching what the book is asking of me. So there's a strategy, but then there's also a willingness to completely, pivot the strategy on a dime to do something else that it needs. So yeah, I'm totally in the thick of all that at the moment.
Well, I love that. So why don't you just tell us about, like, first of all, a little bit about who you are, but more about like what is Permission to Glow really about at its core?
Yeah. Well, Permission to Glow is kind of the summation of all of my work so far as an executive coach and as a meditation teacher, and as also a conscious parent, just trying to pay attention to how I think the world works and what the world is asking of us today in this crazy age that we live in. So much distraction, so much noise, so much division, so much harrowing, threats and uncertainty. And I got this idea over the last maybe 8 years to start organizing into these 4 permissions: the permission to chill, the permission to feel all the feels, permission to glow in the dark, which is why most people hire a coach in the first place. I was always a performer like you. I was a musician growing up. And that permission to glow in the dark was always part of who I was, just as a performer. And then permission to glow in the light, which is to organize with one another and stop competing and start collaborating. And it's one of these things that is the idea kind of took root over the last 5 years. It reorganized my brand. It reorganized my work. I could honestly say it's the work that chose me. And it seems to be this kind of division point, this chapter break between being a Fortune 100 executive coach, which I'm really proud to have grown my business into. I coach leaders at places like Amazon, Avery Dennison, AT&T, into kind of a spiritual teacher. And there's no manual or guide on how to do this. You just have that ever-present voice in your head, like, am I out of line? Am I in line with truth? And it's been this really fascinating experiment on how to kind of live these teachings while also teaching others. So yeah, that's at the core. That's what the book is the 4 permissions. Permission to glow. It's called a spiritual guide to epic leadership. I never knew it would be my work to take spiritual concepts into corporate America. Truly, that's the work that chose me. And the book is fun because it's wrapped in a lot of humor and 1980s pop culture references. There's a lot of sugar to help the medicine go down, but make no mistake, I truly feel this is the medicine the world needs right now.
Yeah.
And it's targeted towards corporate leaders who, could hopefully impact, tens of thousands of other families.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I was thinking about is that, we tend to just look at the corporate kind of leadership as leaders, but for some reason online, we don't really look at ourselves as leaders. So,
Right.
but I do think we can actually really learn a lot by diving into that world and saying, how can I bring some of this to this world? Because I am like, and when I'm thinking about people who are launching things, and that's just kind of where I'm at, like when people have the idea and they want to
Yep.
get it out to the world, it's that moment where you choose to or are called to be a leader, but you have to
I'm
you
so glad
almost.
you brought that up, because I have to tackle that head on in the very opening of the book. Is that, you know, purpose driven living encourages others to step forward, and that in itself is leadership. So whether you're talking about thought leadership, or whether you're talking about, influencing the neighbor who wakes you up every day with the damn leaf blower, that is leadership. It's not having a bunch of direct reports is not a prerequisite for leadership. It's not a job title. It is what's being asked of us to positively influence the world around us. So yeah, I'm so glad you hit on that early.
Yeah, I mean the thing too, like I feel like, and again, I'm gonna say, like, even if like you like once you read the book, definitely just keep an eye on what Casey's doing, because like leader, Casey, you are very extroverted and in a lot of ways, but even so, on a lot of the interviews that I've seen and a lot of the stuff around the launch, like I said, I don't feel like that. I don't necessarily feel like I feel like what you're showing is another side to that, and that it doesn't
Yeah.
all have to be fanfare and this and that and
Right.
being out there,
Thank
but
God.
it's also about like this is a
Yeah.
serious message in a way, because it can impact all of us. And
Y-
but at the same time, make no mistake, Casey knows how to, like
Beat the
lighten things
drum.
up.
Well,
If he needs.
well, if you think back to, we spent some time together in a lot of Jonathan Fields
Yeah,
programs and events. We worked on the first Camp Good Life project back in
yeah,
2014, and it ran for 5 years. And I was kind of the de facto spirit captain, head counselor of that, like an MC. And I got to use that really performative aspect to kind of call people forward, call people out of their shell, and really make everybody feel included. And that was a beautiful gift to do that. However, I was also leading morning meditation every day at 6 a.m. And that's probably a bigger part of who I am. And it was always a challenge in my personal brand, because people would run into me and say, wow, your brother is so chill. I sat through his meditation and it was really deep and whatever. And I'm like, what do you mean my brother? My brother's not, oh my God, they don't even know that I'm this, it's the same person, right? So yeah, I do take this work really seriously, but I also use that permission to glow in the dark thing, that performative aspect, to get people's attention, to make them come out to play. And yeah, it's something worth noting. But I would say in terms of the launch so far and kind of pushing this out to the world, it's brought up way more of my internal struggles, fears, apprehension, resistance, just to push out something that's so, creatively ambitious, but also spiritually connected. Who am
Yeah.
I to do this? I'm always asking that same imposter question that everybody has. Every coach, every person, every thought leader has it.
Yeah.
And so all the more reason to take it seriously, while also sometimes just throwing everything off and say, screw it, I'm going to have fun.
So when did you, like you're talking about calling this idea and this message out, but when did you, if you were to look back in time, when were
Yeah.
you first kind of like rolling this around, like, this could be kind of like this
Yeah.
thing? Like, when did you first start thinking about it? Because and the reason why I'm asking you is not to just like
Yep.
figure out your creative process, but I think that
Yeah.
it goes to show people who maybe are like, yeah, I want to write a book, that it's not it's not like a month-long thing and then we're
Yeah.
done.
Right.
There's time before that where you might be noodling the idea.
Well, like a lot of my heroes, I mentioned Jonathan Fields, Charlie Gilkey, another great coach and friend who's become a coworker. Um, they told you, like, when you tell some of your heroes the first time, like, hey, I'm writing a book, a lot of them will say, oh, you don't want to write a book. No, don't, please don't. Do not do this to yourself, And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I got a book in me. I got like 50 books in me. You don't know me. And but the fact is, they're trying to spare you from the enormity of the work it takes to just chisel down something that's worth writing a book about. And I'm not in no way trying to discourage anyone from doing it. It is a beautiful process. You should do it. You will do it. However, what you pointed to, I think, is really important. Like, I kind of grew up on a lot of personal development stuff. I love Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I love Miguel Ruiz and the 4 Agreements. All of these frameworks that help us understand life on earth. I always wanted to make my own dent in the universe with a framework. And this framework started taking shape maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I started using the phrase permission to glow in the dark. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I just started using it. And at the same time, I started launching meditation programs for the company I worked for. And it was represented by the pause button, which is like what became permission to chill. And then as recent as maybe 3 years ago in my coach's training, I was discovering permission to feel all the feels as access to our full humanity. So I had these 3 permissions. And then my friend, she was my shiro, then became my friend, Ani DeFranco. She brought up the idea, like, what if there's just a 4th permission of like permission to glow in the light? I'm like, oh shit, now I got to figure out what that is. And it became this like deep exploration. So by the time I sat down to write the book, during the pandemic, no more excuses, time to write a book, I had to really uncover what each of these meant and why they work together as a unified framework. So it was that constant showing up and discovery. But yeah, you're looking at maybe 6 or 7 years of just like some deeper exploration around it until I really felt like I had, the framework together.
Yeah. So I guess what that can kind of say to somebody else is, it's okay that if you've had an idea for years. So that's sometimes what it actually takes, is that there
Yeah.
might be multiple kind of things kind of starting to line up, and then you'll get to a point where you'll be like, okay, time to write.
Well, I love sharing the creative process. I'm a total nerd about it as a songwriter. And I mean, you have guys like Paul Simon or Leonard Cohen, Hallelujah, this song that's overplayed that everyone loves and appreciates. It took him 12 years to write that song. 12 years, putting it down, picking it up, chiseling, polishing. He wrote hundreds of
Wow.
verses for that song.
Wow.
And I mean, it truly is like scripture level craft, And I'm not saying my book is by any stretch, but I'm saying I did figure out along the way the patience it takes to put something down, pick it back up, and also refine it into something that I think is helpful. I mean, I also I think I've mentioned this to you when we nerded out on books, but Michael Bungay Stanier, I think, is a great example. He wrote The
Oh,
Coaching
right.
Habit.
Yeah.
This is a phenomenal book. It's 27,000 words. He took 4.5 years to write this book. It could have easily been a 100,000 word textbook on coaching, but he was so generous. It was like the Mark Twain quote: if I would have had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. He chiseled that sucker down to 27,000 words, and he
Yeah.
became kind of a blueprint for me. I probably wrote 80,000 words to get to the 30,000 that are in the final book, because it's, you got to think about how this is received by busy people.
Yeah, I'm actually just kind of like, I'm like, whoa, going in my head about this because we are so, I think, especially online entrepreneurs, we've been
Yeah.
like, okay, everything's so fast, it's so easy. There's no gatekeepers, but it's not about having a gatekeeper if you're writing a book, it's really making sure that you are in that chiseling process. And sometimes, I think, and this is for myself, just I'm like, okay, my book proposal's done and this is done. And I'm like all ready to like check
Yeah.
things off. And I've had to like fully kind of slow myself down because of just various reasons related to the book. And what I'm just seeing is just like, it's because I have this expectation that it's easy. It's not a blog post, friends. It's not a blog post. It's
Right.
not even an ebook. It's not
Yeah.
even a course you can put up a course in a weekend. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
You might be able to create those things after you've created the book, and that will make it easy if you want easier to do that stuff. But I think that people definitely, the patience aspect is something that I'm realizing is
Well,
necessary.
it's funny because in the beginning, I share this concept of frenemies. These are like the shadow sides of each of the four permissions, and the shadow character of permission to chill is Speedy Rabbit. So what you described as Speedy Rabbit, like we want to fast forward to having the finished book and having it be done and check off the list and all that stuff, and that's great. And trust me, when you get into the world of publishing, you start realizing so many people can buy their way into being a huge author. Buy your way onto the bestseller list, buy yourself the best ghostwriters, buy yourself the best publisher, whatever you want. If you got the money, you'll have the book. However, creatively, I wanted the book to transform me as a person, and I want the book to transform readers. So it's a longer road, it's a harder road, it's a little bit more crazy making road. And I think a helpful question is always like, each day as you're showing up to it, it's like, what does the book want from me today? Maybe it just needs me to write 500 crappy words that might ultimately turn into 50 good words if you're lucky.
Exactly.
It's like a meditation practice, right?
Mhm.
Or sometimes the book will say, I need you to drop all this other stuff and focus on this to get the word out about me. And just staying in tune with what the book is asking of you, I think, is a really interesting process, because it is bigger than any of those other things you mentioned. It's
Yeah.
something that can live on. It's something that a woman can walk into a bookstore 100 years from now and trip over, and it could change her life. Like, it has nothing to do with you today. It has nothing to do with the money it's going to make you or what's going to do for your brand. It has everything to do with what it can do in the future. And
Yeah.
without, at the risk of making that sound overly big or too high stakes, I think it does deserve some respect, that
Yeah.
process.
I do too. I love that. So as I'm looking at my questions, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so gonna need to talk like we're gonna have to do like a post-launch debrief
Oh
kind of
my God, we
thing.
could set them
So
up
we're
and knock
definitely
them
gonna do
down
that.
too.
But I
Yeah.
want to ask you, like, it's not really shifting gears because we're still talking about the book here, but I want to know, you started talking about like the website and kind
Yeah.
of tooling the brand. For me, when I think of that, I'm like, oh, that's him actually working on the launch. Other people might think that's not the launch, but
Right.
really, you were really kind of thinking about how things were going to
Yeah.
potentially roll out and realize, okay, I need to get my website and the brand like where it needs to be. Like, when
Yeah.
did you start that process and what did you work on?
Yeah, so like literally last summer, sometime you ran that workshop with Amelia, and I showed up to it. I asked a bunch of questions. I was just really geeked out about Elementor and moving towards a more modular system of my website. And I've designed websites for years, and it's never been easier to get something beautiful that works well and performs than it is right now. You just have to be willing to slow down to speed up. So yours was like the knock over the head, like slow down, get it into a system and a framework that works better than just like coding a bunch of widgets and garbage band-aids in the background. So I started working on that early this year, and God kind of forced my hand, because I did the worst thing, and I hired a dude on Fiverr way overseas, and I paid some crazy, stupid, low budget, and he melted down my entire website. Like, I went
Oh
on the
my
website one day
gosh.
and it looked like a carnival, like 12 years of my work that was just reduced to ash, basically. And I was like, oh wow, sign from God, so I put up like a coming soon page, and then I freaked the hell out for a while. I'm like, how am I going to rebuild from nothing, and then I'm like, no, this is a chance to work it into Elementor. And so I hired another developer for a much higher budget. Not crazy though, maybe like $3,500 versus I probably got a $15,000 or $20,000 website for $3,500. I had him convert everything to Elementor. And then I spent maybe 3.5 or 4 weeks just kind of retooling the entire site into just a more beautiful thing. And I think it points to something you were driving at, which is the book and the brand, and the impending launch of the book was starting to reorganize my entire brand and my messaging.
Yeah.
And down to my mission of my company, how I position my services, getting my wife on board as a fellow coach with me. I mean, all of these things happened from that kind of inflection point of like, oh, right, this is not the site that got me this far is not going to be the site that's going to support this book.
Yeah. I remember actually, I remember us chatting. This was after I was here in Florida. So I know it was like after
Yeah.
March sometime, maybe it was in the summer, where we were talking about it. And I recall you saying something too about, I feel like the kind of overhaul of the website, it
Yeah.
needed to obviously happen after Fiverr melted it down. By the way, I
Right.
always tell people Fiverr's great for standalone things where people don't log into your stuff.
Yes. Right.
So, like, if you want to give them editing, graphics, but also double check to make sure they're not using somebody else's stuff. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it can be a
Anyways,
little
but
sketchy out there. Yep.
it can be very sketchy, or as my daughter would say, it's very sus.
Very sus. Yeah, I know what sus means. Suspect. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love how she says that. Like, I don't know what sus means, but anyways, so like,
Right.
I know what it means, sis. Okay.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Did I just dad explain that to you? Of course you know what that means.
no, but it was so funny when she said that. And like, the thing is, I just use the word sis. I never say that word, but
Yeah.
it's like, because I call her sister, even though
Oh,
she's my
right.
daughter. But
Right.
anyways, we were talking about like the kind of reason for even like, what were you going to kind of, how is the book's kind of presence going to be used moving forward? And
Yeah.
I think that because it kind of came from a lot of like the different things you were doing, like the coaching, it's kind of like putting your life's work together
It's the integration. Yeah. Integration of
and
everything.
then putting it out, and then ongoing, it's going to be this calling card. In a lot of ways, it's going to be this thing
Right.
that people are going to be like, oh, I might want to hire this guy, let me grab his book, let me just see what that's about. Or, you know what, we're
Yeah.
going to do this team retreat, let's get all the books,
Exactly.
he's going to teach it, great, awesome. So like, I think that you had like kind of like the bigger view too beyond the launch. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it was starting to come into, I mean, let's be honest, entrepreneurship is crazy making, and it's a wild adventure, and
Ugh.
we're all kind of Forrest Gumping it. There's a little bit of a strategy, but there's a whole lot of miracles, and there's a whole lot of, if you pay attention and if you meditate just even a tiny bit, you get clonked on the head, be like, you better pay attention to this, because we just want to keep our head down and generate those dollar bills, right? So you planted that seed with that workshop, and the four permissions were kind of already starting. They're like yoga. They start reorganizing your life, and it was reorganizing my brand. And it did become one of those things. Like, if, not everybody can afford to hire me as a coach, or, like, I can't scale my time in a way that I could be everybody's coach. So a book can go out ahead of me and become an FAQ. It could become a calling card. It could be, a manual on how to apply these principles. So it was becoming all of those things. And I kept that top of mind as I was developing the book with my publisher. I kept interviewing all of my clients constantly, focus grouping. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? What would be more helpful? Chisel, like, from the design down to the content, all these things. And on the other side of that, sausage grinder, now, like, looking at launch and realizing, like, oh yeah, it has become all those things. And even if, God forbid, I sell 0 copies of this thing, no attachment to how it performs whatsoever, it has reorganized and clarified my brand in such a powerful way that'll pay massive returns. And it already has. Like my
Right.
workshop rate has quadrupled because it's so focused and powerful because of the book process. So, again, not to say that it's, fun or easy, but everybody should write a book for that reason, that it's a
Yeah.
great clarifying process.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned the company that you're working with. Like, what role do they play? I
Yeah.
mean, I kind of already know this, but I'm
Yeah.
asking you to kind of answer. Like,
Sure.
what role do they play? How did you choose to work with them? What
Yeah.
happened? Tell
Yeah.
me about
So
that.
Anne's referring to Page Two books, and I'm a huge fan of Page Two books. Like the actual books they produce are just flipping gorgeous. I mentioned one of them, The Coaching Habit. The Coaching Habit, by the way, has sold over 1.1 million copies. Okay. Just take that in for a second. Most 95 or 96% of books sell 4,000 copies or less. And this book is self-published and has sold $1.1 million. So he's pulling, $11 or $12 per book versus the $1 or whatever, $2 off of a traditional
Wow.
publisher. So like wrap your head around that. And then there's the keynotes and the, 6 and 7 figure client contracts that come from that level of notoriety. So like I've just been blown away by how Michael Stanyard did that. And Page Two is kind of key to that because they're a hybrid publishing partner. The the author invests in their fee up front. So unlike a traditional publisher will say, hey, we'll give you 20 or 50 grand or whatever advance to, you know, produce a book. I didn't want to take the time up front. This was my speedy rabbit. I didn't want to take the time of like writing a proposal, pitching a book, adding
Mhm.
another year to year and a half of the process before I could then start writing. I wanted to go now. And Page Two is still selective over what they'll work with and what they'll support, and there's a whole application process. And I thought it was a long shot. They had not done any spiritual books, and I submitted it to Glow as a concept, and the owner got back to me right away, and she said, "This sounds really, really fun. What can we do to do this together?" And so I ended up just being all throughout the process completely blown away by their level. First of all, they're all Canadian, so they're way nicer than we are, for starters. Second is their level of design is just phenomenal. Like
Beautiful.
the editing informs the design informs the editing. It's this constant iterative polishing beautiful process that just results in a stunning book. And all of my friends who have published through Page Two have just created phenomenal books. Susan Piver is a teacher and a
Right.
friend of mine. The Four Noble Truths is a Page Two book. Um, the
Did
this
Charlie?
Charlie Gilkey did Sounds True. He did traditional publishing, but all of my traditional publishing friends had their own challenges with their publisher. There's no guarantee that a publisher is going
Right.
to keep working on it the week past launch. And Page Two has just been super supportive. It's like, yes, I did invest that money up front. However, the recouping of that money has been such a no-brainer in terms of a business asset for the business going forward. And it still leaves the door open for the book to get picked up by other distributors and all this other stuff. So I couldn't be happier with them. I have already told them that I'm going to continue on making this the first of a 5-book series. I'm going to write a book for each of the 4 permissions, and I'm going to get started on the second book here in the next few months.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, I love that. And we talked about this in terms of a company I was thinking about working with, but decided not to.
Yeah,
And really, it came down to like the way, and this is why a website is so important, and like your body of work and how that is displayed. And there's something that you can, on a cellular level, really tell about companies' approaches just
right.
by looking at how they do their work. And so for
Yeah.
me, that company was essentially a no. After I spoke to you, I like had such clarity about that. And I was just like,
Oh,
yes, this is a speedy rabbit, but it's almost like hire slowly, fire quickly.
yeah.
So I had to do it quickly because I just knew that it wasn't the right kind of fit, that other company.
Yeah.
And not to say that they're bad people or anything like that, but it just
It just
wasn't.
might not get you the result you're looking for, and the process might be really painful. I mean, I did talk to, I shopped PR firms around this book. I settled on a great PR firm that I've been super happy with.
Oh, that's great. That's
Smith
great.
Publicity. They've been great. But like a lot of the conventional wisdom is like publishers are difficult. PR teams don't get the results. You're still going to be miserable and in the hole for money. Like there's like so many contexts that people bring to the world of publishing.
Yeah.
And my discovery has been like, okay, if you go on page two's site, their body of work is undeniable. Every book is stunningly gorgeous.
Hmm.
Every book is a book you want to pick up and read, even if it's not something you're interested in.
Absolutely.
And I'm like,
Yep.
well, that says something. And then I started understanding, the level of work. I mean, let's be straight. It was a lot of work with them. Like I did maybe 15 passes of the book. I read through the manuscript 15 times after rewriting it, how many ever times, to get it to the level that, they work to. However, on the other side of that, I'm much more pleased with and proud, and hopefully it'll be something that has some, longevity that I don't need to update every couple of years.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, I mean, that's what it's about is knowing that they're going to push you to be your best, that you're not like part of some like just let's just crank things out and all
Right.
that. And so I love that. So, we'll see.
We'll
We'll see.
see. Well,
I
and and
may, I
and
may
I
reach
think
out
it,
to them.
and I think like the core thing for me was, and this gets into launching, is that the asset itself, regardless of the numbers and who attaches to it and who endorses it, all this stuff, it's like you have to be so confident in the quality of that piece. And that will inform every other piece of the marketing campaign. Like there's
Yes.
no better marketing campaign than to have something that's undeniably badass that one leader wants to pass to another leader and say, you should check this out. This is pretty sweet. And when I
Yeah.
think of the coaching habit, I have probably personally sold maybe 3,000 copies of that for Michael, because
Yeah.
it's so easy to pass on to my clients.
Yeah.
They've bought it for all employees. Like I've done workshops on it because he wrote something that's a pleasure to pass along. And that was my goal, was to just try to make something that's like easy to say, hey, you should check this out. And
Yeah.
then my prayer is that the rest of it will take care of itself. I'll stay inspired to work on the launching and being the carnival barker that you need to be sometimes. And also that other people will as well.
You need to create one for the, for all four books. You need to create like the box set, by the
Oh,
way.
totally. Well, that was my dream. Like my son's nightstand is my old set of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series.
Oh yeah.
And when I see all those together in one book, like that,
You're like,
C.S. Lewis created those in a 6-year period. And I'm like, those are so badass and time tested. Then they became movies, Harry Potter, of course. And I thought, yeah, there's a power in a series that I wouldn't have time to uncover in one book. I wouldn't want to distill that down to just one book. I'd want to expand on it. So yeah, that's the
yeah,
goal, is like a big ass box set.
I love that. I love that. So can you share just a few things? Because like I said, I
Yeah.
don't want to like give away what's happening like after this period of
Yep.
time, but like what are some of the other things besides your website, besides like I feel like upping your visibility on
Yeah.
social media and just being more there, more
Yes.
intentional? Like what are some other pre-launch things that you've been doing, like
Yep.
to get people,
Get
excited, people on
mobilized.
board? Yeah.
Well, probably the biggest one, I started planting seeds. We started realizing about launching, it's all about like delayed fireworks, or these planting seeds that end up blooming later. So you better start farming your ass off early, is what I was telling myself. And I was coming up against these, psychological walls. Like you have to switch gears between being a creative writer and then a tactical launcher. It's a totally different mindset.
Yep.
But a lot of times during the year leading up, they're overlapping. So what I was starting to do was I organized a group of people called the Circuit Board. This was the group of maybe 50 or 60 kind of my diehard readers, followers, really invested in my work. We'd get together every 4 to 6 weeks on Zoom, just a free call. I just host it and just kind of gather their insight, bring them up to speed on here's what I'm thinking for ideas, and just watching their energy. If they were pumped about something, I would do it. If they were not, if they were lukewarm on it, say, okay, that was just a dumb idea. So they started informing a lot of that launch strategy. Will there be a book tour? Can we do that in the pandemic? And there is. I'm going to do a book tour. And what I started doing, because I'm a self-publisher, a first-time author, I started putting all of my chips onto pre-order launch, knowing that that would give me a month advance ahead of pub date. So my pub date's October 5th. My pre-order launch was September 7th. I've started pushing all my chips towards that big launch to make sure I had a sweet book trailer, a beautiful website, shareable tools, media kit, media happening. I'm probably about 35 or 40 podcast interviews in, and those
Wow.
will all start hammering out now in the pre-order window, which is great because the pre-orders start greasing the engine that really makes the most impact, which is the freaking algorithm at Amazon. The algorithm decides. It's like the claw is our master. It's like it decides who stays and who will go. I mean, if you want a successful book into the future, the algorithm needs to know that you're important.
Yeah,
So I
for
thought
sure.
I'm going to start hammering that algorithm with pre-orders. And then as pub date comes, like all of these, like the long tail of media and all these things. So, you know, I'm always in my head telling myself I'm not doing enough, believe it or not, like always.
Well, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot. And I think that like if you as long as you keep saying, am I doing enough? What else can I do?
Yeah,
Then
what
it's
makes
better
sense?
than,
Right.
better than saying I'm not doing enough because like of course there's something else you could do. But I think as long as you're challenging yourself like, okay, what have I done today? What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing? Like just keep asking.
Well, yeah, it's a great point, and you're an amazing launch coach for this reason. This is why I always bring you into the fold early because we
Hmm.
worked on Jonathan's stuff together, like for review and
Oh
camp.
yeah, that's right. Hmm.
And I always run those ideas by you because it's so easy. Anything connected to the internet feels like you're shoveling in freaking quicksand. You never have enough followers. You never have the right followers that so and so has, and you're always comparing numbers and crap, and what numbers matter. And I've always been in more of a qualitative game than a quantitative game. As a coach, I'm more in the influence game than I am in the numbers game so far. And I do
Hmm.
think this book is showing signs of mobilizing a bigger following and bigger reach, and that's great. But I wanted to stop like just hammering myself for not having the right number of followers
Of
from which
course.
from which to launch from. You always
Yeah.
have this number in your head. Oh yeah, it'll be great. I want to have 10,000 followers before I do this, and then because that'll mean this. And it's like, yeah, it might. Or you can just spend all your time creating something beautiful that matters, and then start mobilizing your network. And
That's
I
right.
have I have been really blessed to attract a pretty solid network, yourself included. John, being on Jonathan's podcast for Good Life Project has always been a dream. That's happening this week. There's just tapping your network in a way that makes it, I've been putting those deposits into the karmic piggy bank for many years. So when it comes time to ask, I am leaving no favor unasked. I am like
I
literally
love it.
saying, hey, are you willing to help? How are you willing to help? What are
Yeah,
you willing to
lean
do?
on these people, lean on all these seeds you've planted. And like, I think that anybody who's been impacted in any way by you, like it wasn't even a question. I was like, I kept asking myself, when are you going to have
Yeah.
KC on the podcast? When are you going to start like I was challenged because so I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
it's so, and it's really beautiful that this is one of the beautiful parts of your internet friends. My wife always makes fun of me, like, all your friends are in the internet. Do you even know them in real life? It's like, yeah, I met Ann at a conference once. No, I'm just kidding. We've met in person many
We've
times.
met. I saw your daughter perform in LA.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's
That
been
was a
so
highlight of
many.
Mila's whole game has changed since then.
Oh, that's so great.
Her style game has changed up. She was like, dear
Yeah,
daughter.
Elliot Carter is a force of nature. Elliot's dreams are all coming true at the same time mine are. So like she's signing a big management deal. She's playing at festivals. They opened up Kesha's stage a couple weeks ago at a festival. It's ridiculous. But anyway, the thing it reminds me is like you have these internet friends, and the beautiful part about it is based on reciprocity and service. And if you are truly generous and truly just care about their thing, like I've been such a massive fan of Jonathan's work and Susan Piver's work and your work, like truly for so many years, it's my pleasure to promote what's going on, or to let people know, like,
Exactly.
you're launching something, you need to talk to Ann, or you're doing this, you need to talk to, whatever.
Yeah.
So people love to repay that when the stars align for you. So it wasn't done as like a strategy. It was done from pure love. And now it's like,
Yep.
oh my God, I get to actually ask for something that, I'm pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So I'm sure you've got tons of podcast interviews scheduled now for this next month. You're going to keep mobilizing, keep bringing people into the pre-order fold, beat
Yeah.
that Amazon algorithm, as you
Yeah.
say, push on it.
Massage it. Yeah. Grease those wheels for sure.
Is there anything that you wish that you had done this year that you don't think you're going to be able to do for this book, but
Yeah.
is there something you kind of, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that next time.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I mean, one of them is, for a book really early, there's a fork in the road. And one of the forks is to sell the book into trade. And trade is where you do like hardbound books that could go into airports and Barnes and Noble and all the
Oh,
physical
wow.
retailers, or you could do print on demand strategy. I decided to do print on demand strategy partly because we're coming out of a pandemic, and a lot of friends that did the trade route last year were sitting on pallets of books that they need to pay return freight on. I mean, it's expensive and painful to do that. So I thought, I'm going to stay very agile. I'm going to do all print on demand strategy. And I there's been times where I, like coming, still not knowing exactly what the pandemic is doing. Would I like to have this book in airports for executives to pick up while they're traveling? Totally. And I probably will absolutely go that route with the next book. And, you know, I would always recommend to anybody, always be in the game of building your list. I mean, I have created beautiful lead magnets. I have, massaged that, but like, where the time is best spent, and I could have spent more time, would be in promoting those lead magnets, because just with a little promotion and probably some Facebook ads and nominal budget, it could have been easily building a larger list than I have right now. However, rather than lamenting the size of my list, I'm super excited about the level of engagement of my list. It has
Mm-hmm.
something like a 70% open rate. It has
Wow.
like, it's a highly engaged, it's small and mighty. It's like a Spartan army. And that matters to me. But at the same time, we always want to be in that game of growth.
I love that. I love that. Um, I think all of those, I would probably say the same thing. Like a lot of the things you've said, I would apply to any launch, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that I think that the book definitely has had some kind of, the book and this whole process has had such an impact on you. I mean, I can see it, Casey. Like I can see, like there was like all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, this is serious. This is
Who is
serious
this guy?
business.
Yeah,
We're gonna
yeah.
do this. This is that. I was just like so excited for that. And so, anyways, I just love everything that you shared. I do want to. I'm going to talk to you after this
Yep.
about secret launch stuff when we stop recording. But I also want to just tell anybody who hasn't already kind of done like a little Google search while they're listening to go to thisepiclife.com/book
Yeah.
and pre-order the book. Check out, there's some pre-order
Yeah,
bonuses, I think.
there's super fun pre-order packages, which I'm really, really excited about. A lot of surprise guests and just fun art and posters. We created these. I'll show these to Anne really quick because just to get your reaction. But I wanted to do everything like super 80s style, so I created stickers for people's trapper keepers.
Oh my gosh,
But
I love it.
it's all like unicorns and lightning bolts and yoga, but I wanted to make the launch process kind of like an art project. So there's lots of stickers and just fun, creative art. I hired a guy, a friend of mine who's an artist at Marvel Comics, to draw the interior of the book. So it's a lot of comic book aesthetic. And see, to me, like that was psyching myself up to do the long, hard work of marketing a book, because it's not just the week it comes out. It's like marriage. It's
Yeah.
2 to 3 years to get legs. So you have to stay interested. You have to stay invested. You have to stay in love with the project. And so a lot of this was trying to get myself like really bought into making this a 36-month process.
Yeah, I love that. And I have to tell you, like, somebody once called me the human trapper keeper. So every single time I see you show your trapper keeper, I'm like, why am I the human trapper keeper? It's just because I would always like recall details or information
I
about
think it's
things
a
and
compliment of the
guess.
highest order. Trapper
I'm just
keepers
like,
are sexy, first of all.
I'm like, I love trapper keepers. And I actually, before I even spoke to Casey this morning, I had on several different 80s playlists just so I could
Yeah.
kind of get into the mood, listen to some culture club, some all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Heart. Well, Heart's a little, 70s, 80s, but
Yeah, but I mean, like, how can I get you alone? The
yes.
80s epic heart songs really stand on their own. But yeah, I did this. I don't know where this 80s thing. I mean, I know exactly where it comes from. I grew up as a latchkey kid, Gen X, 80s, all the way. And I wanted to pass along some of the best parts of our pop culture to this next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
And one of my leaders, Benjamin, who's I've worked with for 3 years, he's a CEO in New York. He said, every Friday we meet and it's like I get guitar lessons. And I'm like, dude, that's like the best compliment I've ever got. I don't know exactly what it means, but a guitar is like this synthesizer guitar that you see in the 80s. They're usually bright red. And I'm like, I want the book to feel like freaking guitar lessons.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that so much. Actually, I almost like literally, I almost had a heart attack last night when I was watching VMAs because
Yeah.
Madonna came out, but it was a
Right.
little bit bizarre. I'm
Of
not going to
course.
lie. But I was
Yes.
just like, Madonna.
Right. She comes out to Vogue, right? Like I read about it today. I didn't
Yeah.
see
I
it
was like,
all.
she is not going to sing, is she?
No, she wouldn't be that brave, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. Anyways, Casey, I love you, man.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it's
so
been
much
it's been a
fun.
pleasure watching just this whole process. And I can't wait to get the book, get my hands on it.
Oh my
And
gosh. I
yeah,
mean, I love nerding out on launch stuff, and if it serves your community in any way, I'm always happy to stop by any of the forums you do to share what works and what doesn't. I'm an open book with this stuff. It's all a bunch of experiments, and
yeah,
I'll show real-time proof of what's working or failing. Because it's all just a big game. You just have to
it
play it like a
is.
game, and
It
you're
so
going to
is.
win by doing the thing. But yeah, I love what you do, Anne. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I am excited to get this out to everybody. If you have, again, I want to give that link again, thisepiclife.com/book. And just where should they come and chat with you if they want to be like, hey, over on like Instagram? Is that the best
Yeah,
place?
yeah, I could be found anywhere at This Epic Life. You could DM me on Instagram. Permission to Glow Book is the Instagram handle. Permissionglowbook.com is the same thing as thisepiclife.com/book. And yeah, we're creating all these just fun ways to connect. And I'm also doing a book tour. People could register via text to the book tour. And surprisingly, I'm coming to a lot of cities. So
Are you coming? Do you have any Florida dates?
well, every smart American knows to avoid Florida at all costs. No, I'm just kidding.
I pretend that I'm not here. I'm not lying.
uh, D- Governor DeSantis with his big
Oh my
Grim
gosh.
Reaper sickle, like, come on down to the Sunshine State.
Come on
No,
down. We're not going to protect your children.
yeah, it's crazy. But no, I do love Florida. I have some teammates in St. Augustine. I do plan to make it down there, probably not until after the first of the year. I'm focusing on the Midwest and the East Coast for this first leg, and then I'll make it out to Chicago and down to DC. But yeah, it's thisepiclife.com/tour. And yeah, just please say hello anywhere. I love making new allies through the process, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the book or the launch, anything.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to check out Casey's book, Permission to Glow, all you have to do to find out all about the pre-order bonuses that he's got going on and just get to know him a bit more and maybe even check out his meditation resources, head to thisepiclife.com. I think you can go to thisepiclife.com/book, or you could just look up Permission to Glow and you'll find him. I really hope that you take a moment now to connect with him on his site, meet him over on Instagram. He's just such an amazing force, and you're really, your life, your business will be forever changed once you meet him and get to know what he's all about. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next week. Take care. Bye-bye.